You are 20 years old, kneeling in the gravel lot behind Reardon's drugstore in Scranton, Pennsylvania. Mixing a prescription your boss is too hungover to fill himself. It is October 1944. The radio behind the counter plays big band music between war bulletins. Nobody wants to hear too closely. You have worked here since you were 15, sweeping floors first, then learning the scales. Then the compounding until old Mr. Reardon started calling you Doc as a joke that stopped being a joke. You are not a doctor. You are barely a pharmacist's assistant. But you know how to measure, how to be careful with your hands, how to read a label twice before you trust it once. That is what the Navy noticed when your papers came through. Not your marksmanship, not your size, which is unremarkable. Your steadiness. Your girl Dorothy works the register at the Five and Dime 2 blocks over. She has a laugh that turns heads in church, which she insists on doing anyway because she likes making the choir director's eyebrow twitch. You have known her since the 9th grade. You have not proposed yet, not because you do not want to, but because a boy who does not know if he is coming home does not think it is fair to ask a girl to wait for a ring she cannot wear yet. Your mother disagrees loudly and often. Your father, who repairs shoes 2 streets over, says nothing, which from him is its own kind of argument. You are drafted into the Navy, not the Army, because the Navy needs corpsmen, and corpsmen go where the Marines go. Nobody explains this clearly until you are already in it. You assumed a sailor's war meant decks and horizons. Instead, you are told you will carry a bag of bandages onto beaches that do not belong to anyone yet, walking beside men who carry rifles while you carry morphine, syrettes, and sulfa powder and faith. Training at Great Lakes teaches you anatomy, triage, how to stop bleeding with your bare hand pressed into a wound that does not want to close. How to talk calmly to a man who is dying so that the last thing he hears is not panic. An instructor named Chief Boyle, a barrel-shaped man with a voice like gravel poured from a bucket, tells your class something you will carry the rest of your life. You are not there to save everyone, he says. You are there so that no man dies alone if you can help it. Sometimes that is the only medicine you have. You want to argue with him. You do not yet understand that he is right. You are assigned to a Marine rifle company, attached the way a rib is attached, close enough to feel every breath the body takes. The Marines do not trust corpsmen automatically. Trust here is earned in the field, not printed on paper. The one who earns yours fastest is a broad-shouldered corporal from Amarillo named Walt Pruitt, who is 23 and already has a scar above his eyebrow from Guadalcanal that he refuses to explain except to say, coconut, and laugh like it is the funniest thing in the world. Walt carries a deck of cards that is missing the ace of spades, because he traded it once for a canteen of real coffee and has regretted it ever since. He teaches you to play poker for cigarettes you do not smoke, which means you always lose slowly and painlessly, which he says is good practice for a corpsman. Lose slow, he tells you. Panic is what kills men before the bullet does. Before you ship out for the Pacific, Dorothy sends a small cloth pouch she sewed herself, powder blue, with your initials stitched crooked because she never claimed to be good with a needle. Inside is a photograph of the 2 of you at the county fair the summer before, her laughing at something outside the frame, you looking at her instead of the camera. On the back she has written only 4 words. Bring your hands home. You do not fully understand what she means until much later, when your hands are the only part of you that never stop working, the part everyone else's survival depends on. You slide the photograph into your medical bag, wedged between rolls of gauze, where your fingers will touch it every single time you reach for a bandage. The convoy crosses the Pacific for weeks, island to island, the ocean enormous and indifferent beneath you. Rumors travel faster than orders. Somewhere out there is an island called Iwo Jima, 8 square miles of volcanic rock nobody back home has ever heard of, and command says it will take a few days to secure. Walt hears this and laughs without any humor in it at all. They said that about every island since Tarawa, he says. They're always wrong, and we're always the ones who find out how wrong. On February 19th, 1945, you climb down a cargo net into a landing craft. Your bag strapped tight against your side. Your rifle nearly forgotten because a corpsman is not supposed to fight, only to heal. Though you carry a carbine anyway because nobody on this beach is going to ask what your job title says while bullets are flying. The boat rides low and rough. Men around you are silent in a way that feels louder than shouting. Walt sits across from you, checking his rifle for the 4th time in 10 minutes. He looks up and says only, "Stay close to me and stay low, Doc." That's the whole plan. The ramp drops. What you see first is not the enemy. It is the sand itself, black volcanic ash that swallows boots to the ankle, that turns every step into a struggle against the earth before anyone has even fired a shot. Men fall not from bullets, but from the sheer effort of walking, sinking, dragging themselves forward through ground that seems designed to slow them down long enough for the mountain above to finish the job. Mount Suribachi rises at the southern tip of the island. Silent, watching, its slopes honeycombed with tunnels and gun positions the Navy's bombardment somehow failed to touch. The Japanese have waited. They let the beach fill with men and equipment before the first shell falls. Then the world opens up. Mortar rounds walk down the beach in a pattern too precise to be luck. Machine gun fire rakes sideways from bunkers dug so deep into the rock that muzzle flashes are the only proof they exist at all. You throw yourself flat in the black sand, your bag digging into your ribs, and the noise is not like anything Chief Boyle's lectures prepared you for. It is not noise you hear so much as noise that happens to your entire body at once. Someone screams for a corpsman before you've even caught your breath, and just like that, the war stops being an idea and becomes a list of wounds you must address in order of urgency. The way you were trained, the way your hands already know before your mind catches up. Your first patient is a private you do not know. Hit in the thigh, femoral artery, blood pumping out in rhythm with his heartbeat, staining the black sand darker than it already is. You pack the wound. Apply pressure with your knee because your hands are already busy tying the dressing. And you talk to him the entire time, even though you do not know his name, even though the shelling has not stopped. Even though every second you kneel beside him is a second you are not moving forward with your unit. Chief Boyle's words return to you unbidden. Sometimes that is the only medicine you have. The private survives long enough for stretcher bearers to drag him toward the aid station. And you do not know if he lives past that because you are already crawling toward the next voice calling for help. And the one after that, and the one after that. The beach does not have minutes. It has only the next wounded man. By the time night falls, you have lost count of how many dressings you have applied, how many syrettes of morphine you have pressed into arms shaking from shock and cold. Walt finds you in the darkness, unhurt but hollow-eyed, and presses a canteen into your hand. "Drink," he says. "You're no good to anybody if you fall over." You realize you have not had water since morning. The island does not stop being violent when the sun goes down. Infiltrators move through the darkness, testing lines, and every hour someone somewhere fires at a shadow that may or may not be a man. You sleep in fragments, if sleep is even the word, curled into a shell crater with your bag as a pillow, waking at every distant explosion to check that your hands still remember what they are for. The days blur together into a single continuous demand. Push forward, take a ridge, lose men taking it. Hold it through a counterattack that comes at 3 a.m. with grenades and bayonets and screaming in a language none of you understand except as a sound that means run toward the noise. Not away from it because someone there needs you. You learn the specific weight of carrying a stretcher through terrain that seems built to resist stretchers. Volcanic rock that shifts and crumbles, craters that swallow ankles, distances that feel endless when a man is bleeding out on canvas between your hands and another corpsman's. You learn that morphine runs out faster than the wounded do. And you learn to make choices you were never trained to make. Choices about who receives it first. Choices that visit you afterward in the quiet moments you no longer trust. On the 4th day, your company reaches the base of Suribachi itself. And for a few hours, there is something almost like a lull. The kind of silence Weaver back in training would have called dangerous. The kind that means the war is only reloading. Walt uses the lull to deal a hand of cards missing its ace of spades, and 3 men who have not laughed in 4 days manage something close to it over a joke about the missing card being the only Japanese soldier who successfully infiltrated your position. It is not a good joke. It is exactly the right joke for that moment. On the 5th day, the mountain falls silent from a different kind of silence, and word travels down the line that Marines have reached the summit, that a flag is going up, and for one strange suspended moment, every man on that black beach and every man clinging to the slopes below believes, just for a moment, that the worst might be over. It is not over. The northern half of the island is still ahead, still full of tunnels, still full of men who have been ordered to die rather than surrender. And the fighting there will last another month, grinding and merciless. A war fought over caves and pillboxes and yards of volcanic rock that mean nothing to anyone who has not bled for them. 2 weeks into the campaign, your company is ordered to clear a ridgeline honeycombed with spider holes. Single-man positions so well concealed that men have been shot from behind after walking directly past them. Walt is on point when the first shot cracks out from a position nobody saw. He goes down hard, and for one suspended second, you are frozen in the specific paralysis of watching the person who taught you how to survive become the reason you might not. Then your body moves before your mind gives permission, the way it has learned to over these long, terrible days. And you are crawling toward him through fire directed at anyone who dares to reach a fallen man. Because the enemy here has learned that a wounded Marine is bait for a corpsman, and a corpsman is worth more dead than the man he is trying to save. You reach Walt anyway. The wound is in his abdomen, low and wrong in the particular way that makes your stomach drop even as your hands begin working without waiting for your permission. You pack the wound. You talk to him. He is still conscious, gray-faced, gripping your wrist with a strength that frightens you more than the bleeding does. "Deal me back in, Doc," he says, trying for the joke, and it does not land. And you both know it does not land, and neither of you says so. You get him onto a stretcher with the help of another rifleman, and you carry him yourself over ground that seems to have been designed specifically to punish anyone attempting an act of mercy. And the entire time Walt keeps talking, keeps making you answer him. Because some instinct in him understands that as long as he is talking, he is still deciding to stay. At the aid station, a surgeon with blood to his elbows takes one look and moves fast in a way that tells you everything before anyone says a word. Walt is taken back for surgery that the beach cannot properly support, and you are sent back to the line because the line does not wait. Because somewhere up that ridge, 3 more men are already calling for a corpsman, and the war does not pause for you to sit beside your friend and see how it ends. You do not learn until 2 days later, from a runner passing information down the line, the way information always travels here, in fragments secondhand, unreliable until it isn't, that Walt did not survive the surgery. You are told this while kneeling over another man's shattered leg, and you do not stop working because Chief Boyle's voice is in your head again, quieter now, almost gentle. You are there so that no man dies alone if you can help it. You finish the dressing. You move to the next voice. There is no shelf sturdy enough to hold what you are carrying, and you set it down anyway because that is the only way to keep walking. The nights afterward are worse than before, not because the fighting intensifies, though it does, but because you keep expecting to hear Walt's voice telling you to drink water, to stay low, to lose slow. You find the deck of cards, missing its ace of spades, in what remains of his pack when your unit moves through the position days later, and you take it without asking anyone's permission, because some things you are simply required to carry. The northern caves prove to be the worst of the entire campaign. Positions dug so deep and interconnected that flamethrowers and demolition charges become the only language that reaches them. And you spend those final weeks treating burns alongside bullet wounds, treating men who emerge from tunnel fighting having seen things they will never describe to anyone. Not even to you, though you are the one who cleans and dresses the wounds their silence leaves behind. By the time the island is declared secure in late March, more than 6,000 Americans have died taking 8 square miles of volcanic rock. And you have stopped being able to remember how many wounds you have dressed, how many names you learned only long enough to write them on a tag, how many times your hands worked steadily while the rest of you screamed silently underneath. You are rotated off the island eventually, transported to a hospital ship whose clean white sheets feel like an insult to everything you have just left behind. A doctor examines you and finds nothing physically wrong, which does not match what you feel, though you do not yet have language for what is wrong. Only the certainty that something in you has been rearranged and will not go back to its original shape. You carry Walt's deck of cards home in your sea bag beside the powder blue pouch Dorothy made. The photograph inside it worn soft at the corners from your fingers, finding it during every reach for gauze. Every quiet moment when your hands needed something steady to hold. The ship that carries you back to the mainland takes weeks. And somewhere in the middle of that ocean, you finally sleep through an entire night for the first time since the Black Sand. And you wake disoriented, almost guilty, as though rest itself were a kind of desertion. Scranton has not changed, not the way you have. The drugstore still smells the same. The bell above the door still rings the same note. Mr. Reardon still calls you Doc. Though now the word sits differently, heavier. Earned in a way none of you intended when he first said it as a joke. Dorothy meets you at the station wearing the blue dress you told her, in a letter you barely remember writing that you liked best. She does not ask you to describe the island. She has read the newspapers, has seen the casualty figures printed in small type on page 4, has learned the way all the women waiting at all the stations that year were learning to let a man decide for himself what he is ready to say, and when you marry her that autumn in a ceremony small enough that nobody minds, when you flinch at the sound of a car backfiring outside the church. Your hands, the ones Dorothy asked you to bring home, remain steady enough for the ring, though at night sometimes they shake for reasons you cannot fully explain to her or to yourself. You return to the drugstore, then eventually to a proper pharmacy license. The counting and measuring and careful attention to detail that once seemed like small, unremarkable skills now feeling like the only language, your hands still trust completely. Walt's deck of cards sits in the top drawer of your desk for the rest of your life, missing its ace of spades. And every year on the anniversary of the day you carried him off that ridge, you deal yourself a single hand of solitaire and lose on purpose. Slowly, the way he taught you, because panic is what kills a man before the wound does. And grief, you have learned, follows the very same rule. Your children grow up knowing you served as a Navy corpsman in the Pacific. A fact stated plainly and rarely elaborated. A single line in the long story of an ordinary life that continued against every reasonable expectation. Past the black sand and the caves and the silence afterward. You do not tell them about the private whose name you never learned, or the morphine that ran out too soon too many times, or the specific weight of a stretcher on a ridge designed to punish mercy. You tell them, when they are old enough to ask real questions, that the most important thing you ever learned was that showing up beside a frightened person, even when you cannot fix what is wrong, is its own kind of medicine, the only kind available in the worst moments, and sometimes the only one that matters. In 1985, 40 years after the island, you travel with Dorothy and your eldest son to a reunion of surviving corpsmen and Marines from your old company, held in a hotel banquet hall that smells of coffee and carpet cleaner instead of cordite and volcanic sulfur. The men who gather there are old now, softened by 4 decades of ordinary life. And yet you recognize something in each of their faces immediately. A specific quality around the eyes that only people who were on that beach together seem to share. Someone has brought a photograph enlargement of the flag raising, framed and displayed near the entrance, and you find yourself standing before it longer than you intend, remembering the strange suspended hope of that morning. The mistaken belief that the worst might already be behind you. A man you do not immediately recognize approaches. Introduces himself as the private you treated on the first day, the one with the femoral wound. The one whose name you never learned because there had been no time. Only pressure and dressing and talking to keep him conscious while the world exploded around both of you. He has spent 40 years wondering whether the corpsman who saved his life on that beach survived the rest of the campaign. Has attended 3 prior reunions hoping to find you, and when he finally says your name aloud, something in you that has been braced and guarded for 4 decades finally quietly releases. You do not have adequate words for that moment, so instead you simply shake his hand for a long time. The way men of your generation do when words fail. And Dorothy watches from a few feet away with an expression you recognize as the same one she wore the day you stepped off the train, patient and unafraid of your silence, willing to let this moment belong entirely to you. That night, back in your hotel room, you take out the deck of cards missing its ace of spades. And for the first time in 40 years, you tell Dorothy the whole story of the ridge. Not the summary you gave her in 1945, but the actual weight of it, the way Walt kept talking to make you answer him. The specific color the black sand turned beneath men who could not be saved. The sound of Chief Boyle's voice returning to you at the worst possible moments, telling you that you were not there to save everyone, only to make sure no man died alone if you could help it. She listens without once telling you that it was not your fault, which is precisely how you manage to keep talking until you reach the end. In the morning, you deal yourself a single hand of solitaire in the hotel restaurant while Dorothy orders coffee. And, for the first time, you do not lose on purpose. You simply play the hand as it comes, the way Walt might have told you to eventually, once enough years had passed. Once carrying something long enough finally teaches a person how to set it down without dropping it. You think of the private, decades later remembering the specific sound of your voice keeping him, tethered to consciousness on a beach that tried its hardest to take him. You think of Walt, 23 years old forever, teaching a scared young corpsman to lose slow because panic kills faster than any bullet. You think of your own hands, the ones Dorothy asked you to bring home, steady enough across 40 years of measuring, counting, dressing wounds both physical and otherwise, steady enough finally to hold the whole weight of that island without flinching. Outside the hotel window, an ordinary morning continues in an ordinary American city. Buses running, children walking to school, a life built patiently on top of everything the war took and everything it somehow, against all reasonable odds, allowed you to keep. You were never a hero in the way the posters promised. You were only ever the person who showed up again and again on the worst days of other men's lives, with steady hands and no promises except one, that whatever happened next, they would not face it alone. That, it turns out, was enough. It was always enough.